What really happens after we die? Do we wake up somewhere else? Does our soul leave the body and travel to another dimension? Or does everything simply stop? Now, imagine asking this question to one of the greatest scientific minds of the 20th century, the Nobel Prize winning physicist Richard Feynman. And here's the twist. His answer isn't mystical. It isn't religious, and it's probably not what you think, but it's far more powerful and strangely comforting than any fairy tale about heaven or reincarnation. Today, we're going to explore what Feynman would say about death, not from superstition, but from physics, from atoms, from the laws of the universe itself. And by the end of this chapter, you may never look at death the same way again. Who was Richard Feynman, and why does his opinion matter? Before we dive into the mystery of death, we need to understand the mind behind the explanation. Richard Feynman wasn't just any scientist. He was a revolutionary thinker, a Nobel Prize winner for his work in quantum electrodynamics, a key contributor to the Manhattan Project, a professor at Caltech, a man who could explain the most complex ideas in the simplest language. But more than that, he was obsessed with truth. Feynman didn't believe in pretending to know something he didn't. If there was no evidence, he wouldn't accept it. If something couldn't be tested, he wouldn't claim it as fact. And when it came to death, he approached it the same way he approached everything else, with curiosity, honesty, and fearless logic. The first shock: there's no you separate from your body. Let's start with the core idea. Most religions teach that we have a soul, something separate from the body that survives after death. But Feynman saw things differently, from a physics perspective. What you call you is not a separate invisible spirit. You are a process, a pattern, a complex arrangement of atoms interacting in very specific ways. Your thoughts, electrical signals between neurons, your emotions, chemical reactions in your brain, your memories, physical structures formed by neural connections. In other words, you are matter in motion. And when the motion stops, when the brain stops functioning, the pattern dissolves, not because of punishment, not because of judgment, simply because that's what physics does. When a candle flame goes out, where does the flame go? Nowhere. The process just stops. Feynman would argue that consciousness is similar. It's not a thing floating inside you, it's something your brain does. And when the brain no longer works, consciousness ends. That's it. No drama, no cosmic courtroom, just the laws of nature. But wait, doesn't physics say energy can't be destroyed? Here's where things get interesting. Many people say energy can't be created or destroyed, so our soul must continue as energy. It sounds scientific, but it's a misunderstanding. Yes, the law of conservation of energy is real. The total energy in a closed system remains constant. Feynman himself deeply respected this law. But your consciousness is not a separate packet of energy that floats away. The energy in your body, the heat, the electrical signals doesn't vanish when you die. It spreads out. Your body cools. The heat transfers into the air. The atoms return to the earth. The energy disperses into the environment. But the pattern, the organized structure that made you disappears. Think of it like a whirlpool in a river. The water molecules continue flowing after the whirlpool disappears. But the whirlpool itself, the pattern, is gone. You were the whirlpool, and the universe keeps flowing. The beautiful part: you are literally made of stars. Now, here's the part Feynman loved to talk about. The atoms in your body, the carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, were forged inside ancient stars billions of years ago. When massive stars exploded in supernovae, they scattered those atoms across the cosmos. Those atoms became part of Earth, then plants, then animals. Then you are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, temporarily arranged as a human being. And when you die, those atoms don't disappear. They return. They become soil. They become air. They may one day become part of another living thing. In that sense, you don't leave the universe. You were never separate from it. This isn't poetic fantasy. This is astrophysics, the hard truth. There is no evidence of an afterlife. Feynman was brutally honest about this. He didn't claim there was no afterlife with absolute certainty. He simply said, there is no scientific evidence for one. And for him, that mattered. He once explained that it is better to live with uncertainty than to believe in something just because it feels comforting. I would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. That mindset changes how we look at death, instead of inventing stories to remove fear. Feynman would encourage us to face reality directly. Yes, death means the end of individual consciousness. Yes, it can feel frightening, but pretending otherwise doesn't make it true. Understanding reality, even if it's uncomfortable, is more powerful. So what actually happens the moment you die? From a purely physical standpoint, your heart stops. Blood flow ends. Oxygen no longer reaches the brain. Within minutes, brain activity ceases. Without electrical activity, there are no thoughts, no memories, no awareness. The complex neural dance that created your experience of being, you ends. Not gradually drifting somewhere else, not traveling through a tunnel, just stopping, like turning off a computer. The hardware remains for a while, but the software, the running process, is gone. Why this isn't as dark as it sounds at first. This sounds bleak, no heaven, no reincarnation, no second chance, but Feynman saw beauty in this. Because if this life is the only conscious experience you get, then it becomes infinitely precious. Every conversation matters. Every sunset matters. Every laugh matters. Not because it echoes forever in eternity, but because it happens at all. The improbability of you existing, the billions of cosmic accidents required for your birth, makes your life extraordinary. You are a temporary arrangement of stuff that can think about stars. That's not depressing. That's miraculous. The real legacy information lives on. Here's something Feynman might smile about. While your consciousness ends, your influence doesn't. The words you speak change other people's brains. The kindness you show rewires someone's memory. The ideas you create ripple outward. In physics, information is powerful. Once it affects a system, it leaves traces. You are constantly shaping the future, long after your atoms disperse. The consequences of your actions continue. Your body ends, but the chain reactions you started do not. Closing of chapter 1, so what happens after death? According to the logic Feynman followed, your body returns to the cosmos. Your energy disperses. Your atomic structure dissolves. Your consciousness ends, not because of punishment, not because of reward, but because you were always a beautiful, temporary pattern in an ancient universe. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. In the next chapter, we'll go even deeper. We'll explore whether quantum physics leaves any room at all for something beyond death, and why many people misunderstand what quantum mechanics actually says about consciousness. What if death isn't really the end? What if quantum physics, the strange, mysterious science of the very small, secretly proves that consciousness survives? You've probably heard claims like quantum mechanics shows the soul leaves the body. Consciousness creates reality. Energy vibrates into another dimension after death. It sounds scientific. It sounds deep. It sounds revolutionary. But if you asked Richard Feynman about this, he would likely smile, and then carefully dismantle the entire argument. Because here's the truth. Quantum physics is strange. Unbelievably strange, but it does not say what many people think it says about death. In this chapter, we're going to explore what quantum mechanics really tells us, and what it absolutely does not. And by the end, you'll understand why the real story is far more fascinating than the fantasy. The quantum mystery that confuses everyone, quantum mechanics, studies the smallest building blocks of reality. Electrons, photons, atoms, and when scientists first began studying this world in the early 20th century, they discovered something shocking. Particles don't behave like tiny solid balls. They behave like waves. They exist in probabilities. They can be in multiple states at once. This idea, called superposition, suggests that a particle can exist in several possible states until it's measured. Now here's where people jump to conclusions. Some interpret this to mean consciousness collapses reality. Observation creates the universe. If consciousness affects particles, maybe it survives death. But that's not what the experiments actually show, and Feynman was very clear about this. I think I can safely say that nobody understands quantum mechanics. That's a famous quote from Feynman, and he meant it. Quantum mechanics is mathematically precise. It predicts experimental results with incredible accuracy, but the interpretation of what it means philosophically, that's another story. Feynman warned against taking poetic interpretations and turning them into mystical conclusions. Yes, particles behave in bizarre ways. Yes, observation matters in experiments. But observation in physics does not mean human awareness. It simply means interaction. When a particle interacts with another particle, the system changes. No human mind required. The universe was functioning for billions of years before conscious beings ever evolved. Quantum fields were fluctuating long before brains existed. So the idea that human consciousness is required to collapse reality doesn't hold up scientifically. The brain is not a quantum ghost machine. Some theories claim the brain uses quantum mechanics to create consciousness, and therefore consciousness might detach and survive death. But here's the problem. The brain is warm, wet, and noisy. Quantum effects are extremely delicate. They usually occur at near absolute zero temperatures in highly controlled environments. Your brain is not a laboratory vacuum chamber. It's biological tissue operating at body temperature. While quantum effects exist at the microscopic level everywhere, there is no solid evidence that they allow consciousness to float away after death. Feynman would insist on evidence, not speculation, not spiritual reinterpretation of physics. Evidence. And so far, no reproducible experiment has shown that consciousness exists independently of the brain. The double-slit experiment and why it doesn't prove an afterlife. One of the most famous quantum experiments is the double-slit experiment. When particles like electrons pass through two slits without being observed, they create an interference pattern, behaving like waves. When measured, they behave like particles. This seems magical. It tempts people to say, see, reality changes when observed. But again, observed means measured by a device, not thought about by a mind. The measuring instrument interacts physically with the particle. That interaction changes the system. No mystical awareness involved. Feynman himself described this experiment as containing the central mystery of quantum mechanics. But nowhere did he suggest it implies personal immortality. The weirdness of physics does not automatically validate spiritual survival. Strange does not equal supernatural. What about the idea that we're all connected? Quantum entanglement is another concept, often linked to spiritual beliefs. When two particles become entangled, measuring one instantly influences the state of the other, even if they're far apart. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance. Some interpret this as proof that everything is spiritually connected, but entanglement doesn't transmit souls or memories. It describes correlations between physical systems created by specific interactions. Once the system breaks down, like when a brain dies, the organized structure that maintained information disappears. Entanglement doesn't preserve identity. It doesn't store your personality in the cosmos. It's a precise mathematical relationship between quantum states. Beautiful, yes, evidence for life after death. Number why we want quantum immortality to be true. Here's something deeper. Humans don't just want answers. We want comfort. When science becomes complex and mysterious, it's tempting to insert hope into the gaps. Quantum physics is mysterious enough to feel like magic, so people project spiritual meaning onto it. But Feynman warned against this exact behavior. He believed the beauty of science lies in its honesty. If we don't know something, we say we don't know it. We don't fill the silence with comforting stories. In fact, he argued that living with uncertainty is more courageous and more authentic than pretending certainty about the unknown. Could there be something beyond physics? Now, here's where Feynman's humility shined. He never claimed to have ultimate answers about existence. He simply worked within what could be tested. Could there be dimensions beyond our current understanding, possibly? Could new physics emerge in the future? Absolutely, science evolves. But until there is evidence, it remains speculation. And speculation is not proof. That doesn't make life meaningless. It makes the search for truth ongoing. The deeper question, what is consciousness? Instead of asking, does consciousness survive death? Feynman would probably ask a more fundamental question. What is consciousness in the first place? Neuroscience shows that consciousnness correlates with brain activity. Damage certain brain regions and personality changes, alter chemistry and perception changes. Stop neural activity, and awareness disappears. Everything we observe suggests consciousness is a process generated by physical systems. And when the system stops functioning, the process stops, just like music stops when the instrument is destroyed. The melody doesn't float in space waiting for another violin. It required the instrument to exist. The real wonder isn't survival, it's existence. Here's something rarely appreciated. The truly astonishing fact isn't whether we survive death. It's that matter arranged itself into beings capable of asking the question. Think about that. For billions of years, the universe was just particles and stars. Then chemistry happened, then biology, then evolution. Eventually, collections of atoms began to think. You are the universe becoming aware of itself. That's not mystical. That's evolutionary physics. And it's extraordinary facing death without illusion. So if quantum physics doesn't promise an afterlife, what does it give us? Clarity, honesty. A universe governed by consistent laws. Death, in this view, is not a doorway to another realm. It is the end of a specific organized pattern of matter and energy. That might feel final. Because it is, but finality gives urgency. It gives weight. It makes love more intense. It makes time more valuable. Closing of Chapter 2, Quantum Mechanics, is strange. Reality at its deepest level is mind-bending. But nothing in modern physics currently suggests that personal consciousness detaches and continues after death. According to the scientific mindset Feynman embodied, when the brain stops, the experience stops. No hidden dimension storing your memories, no quantum tunnel carrying your identity elsewhere. And yet, the story isn't hopeless, because in the final chapter, we'll explore something even more powerful. If death truly is the end of individual awareness, how should we live? What did Feynman believe gives life meaning in a universe without guaranteed eternity? And why might accepting mortality be the key to living fully? If this life is all you get, no restart, no hidden level, no eternity waiting behind the curtain, then what does life become meaningless? Or does it become infinitely more valuable? When you understand death the way Richard Feynman did, not as a spiritual transition, but as the natural end of a physical process, something surprising happens. Fear shrinks and responsibility grows, because if there is no cosmic judge, no guaranteed afterlife, then the meaning of your life is not assigned, it is created. The courage to not know one of Feynman's most powerful traits wasn't intelligence, it was intellectual courage. He was comfortable saying, I don't know, most people rush to certainty about death because uncertainty feels terrifying. But Feynman believed uncertainty is honest, and honesty is liberating. He once explained that it's better to live with doubt than to cling to false answers for comfort. Why? Because false certainty limits curiosity. Uncertainty keeps the mind alive. When it comes to death, the honest position, scientifically, is this: we have no reliable evidence of personal survival after brain death. That doesn't mean it's impossible. It means we don't know, and pretending we do know in either direction is arrogance. That humility changes everything. Instead of living for a promised eternity, you begin living for this moment. The real miracle you're here at all, step back for a second. The universe is about 13.8 billion years old. For most of that time, there were no humans, no music, no laughter, just stars burning in silence. Then, through a chain of events so improbable, it's almost absurd, atoms combined into molecules, molecules into cells, cells into organisms, and eventually into minds capable of asking, what happens after death? The fact that you exist at all is astronomically unlikely. The chances of your exact genetic combination, your experiences, your memories, it's staggering from Feynman's perspective. This is where the wonder lies, not in an imagined continuation, but in the sheer improbability of now. You are a temporary arrangement of cosmic material that became conscious. That alone is extraordinary. Why mortality makes life intense. Imagine if you were guaranteed eternal life. Would today matter? Would this conversation matter? Would you rush to say, I love you to someone? Scarcity creates value. Time is precious because it runs out. Feynman understood that limits create meaning. A great piece of music moves us not because it lasts forever, but because it ends. A sunset is beautiful because it fades. Your life is powerful because it is finite. Death doesn't erase meaning. It sharpens it. There is no cosmic scoreboard in many belief systems. Morality is enforced by eternal reward or punishment. But Feynman didn't rely on fear of hell or promise of heaven to justify ethics. He believed morality emerges from human connection, empathy, and consequence. When you hurt someone, it matters, not because of divine punishment, but because suffering is real. When you help someone, it matters, because their experience improves. In a finite life, actions carry enormous weight. There's no reset button. No, I'll fix it in the next life. This is it, and that makes kindness urgent. Your influence outlives you while your consciousness may end. Your impact doesn't vanish instantly. Every interaction changes the world slightly. A conversation can shift someone's path. A small act of encouragement can echo for decades. In physics, systems influence other systems. Cause and effect ripple outward. Even after your brain stops functioning, the consequences of your actions continue unfolding. You become part of other people's memories, part of their decisions, part of their stories, not as a ghost, but as influence. Your pattern dissolves. Your impact propagates. The freedom of a natural universe. There's something deeply freeing about a universe governed by consistent physical laws. No hidden judgments, no secret surveillance, no supernatural bookkeeping. Just cause and effect. Feynman found beauty in that simplicity. The same laws that govern falling apples govern exploding stars. The same physics that shapes galaxies shapes neurons. You are not separate from nature. You are nature, and when you die, nature continues. Not as a punishment or reward, but as continuation. The universe isn't cruel, it's indifferent. And strangely, that indifference can feel peaceful. How Feynman faced his own death. When Feynman was dying of cancer in 1988, he reportedly said, "I'd hate to die twice. It's so boring." That wasn't denial, that was acceptance. He didn't cling to fantasies. He didn't publicly proclaim certainty about what comes next. He faced the unknown the same way he faced physics problems, with curiosity, with humor, with honesty. He lived intensely. He loved deeply. He explored relentlessly. And when it was time to go, he went as a scientist, aware that the experiment of Richard Feynman was ending. Not the universe, just that particular arrangement of atoms. If this is all there is, live fully, if there is no guaranteed eternity, then procrastinating life is tragic. Waiting to be happy later is dangerous. Delaying courage is costly. This moment is not rehearsal, it's performance. The awareness you have right now, the ability to read these words, to question existence, is temporary. One day the electrical patterns in your brain will stop, not dramatically, just biologically. And that's okay, because between birth and death, you get something incredible: experience, love, discovery, laughter. Confusion, growth, that's not small. That's cosmic. The shift from fear to awe. Many people fear death because they imagine endless darkness. But think carefully. Before you were born, you didn't experience suffering. Existence isn't painful. It's simply the absence of experience. Feynman might argue that fearing non-existence is like fearing the time before your birth. What truly matters is the experience while it's happening. And right now, it is happening. You are alive in a universe that produced consciousness through blind physical processes. That's not depressing. That's astonishing. Meaning is not discovered. It's made. If there's no pre-written cosmic script, then meaning isn't assigned from above. It's created from within. You choose what matters. You choose what to build. You choose what to value. That responsibility can feel heavy, but it's also empowering. You are not a pawn in a divine narrative. You are an active participant in shaping your brief window of awareness. In a finite life, authenticity matters more than obedience. Curiosity matters more than dogma. Understanding matters more than comfort. The final perspective. So what happens after death? From the scientific perspective Feynman championed. Your brain stops functioning. Your consciousness ends. Your atoms disperse. Your energy redistributes. No confirmed evidence of personal continuation. No reliable proof of a surviving soul. Just the quiet continuation of physics. And yet, that doesn't make life small. It makes it rare. It makes it fragile. It makes it magnificent. Because for a short time, against overwhelming odds, the universe arranged itself into you. And you got to experience it. Closing words. Maybe the real message isn't about what happens after death. Maybe it's about what happens before it. You are a temporary pattern in an ancient cosmos. You are star stuff that became self-aware. One day the pattern will dissolve. But right now it's here, thinking, feeling, wondering. And that, even if it lasts only a moment in cosmic time, is extraordinary.